fund is out. Okay. Did I hear that we wanted to wait on the home fund?
No, I just said if there was something more pressing, we don't have to do that first, but let's just go ahead and...
Okay.
So we received a letter from the health department. They're obviously big picture, and I know when I talked to their director a year and a half ago on the needle issue, they're trying to be proactive on kind of dealing with the needle issue, which is associated with the homeless issue. So I wasn't surprised. I haven't heard back when we met with Keith, the chief, and I on the needle issue about what they're really going to do. They're talking about funding a full-time position that actually drives around and picks up needles, because they can't do sharps containers because they get broken into. It's just a really difficult issue. We have problems with our staff and our landscape contractor, that our SOP right now is when they get in to clean, like at a Turner or some of these areas, our parks, and they find needles, which they're finding a lot of, they won't touch them. They call 911. 911 then dispatches somebody. Our guys aren't going to touch them. So it's health department knows it's an issue, and they know they're a part of the problem because of the needle exchange. So how that's related to this is we cleaned up an encampment a couple of years ago down by the Boy Scout Bridge at Kendall, because that's, it's a right of way. We cleaned that up, but I received a lot of pushback from the union when we did that. There was a lot of grumbling. It was like, look, this isn't what we're skilled to do. It's not, we don't have the equipment. So this has been this kind of lingering issue. I know that Zach is working on this conservancy thing where we're trying to get a lot of these properties that are just privately owned or they're unopened right of way, or like in this case a city property that we picked up through a kind of a failed project. I don't know if putting it into the conservancy is the thing to do either. I mean, at the end of the day, the health department in this letter, and I'm hoping they're sending this same letter out to every single or private homeowner, that they're saying, because there's encampments all along it, they're wanting it cleaned up. But that's kind of easier said than done. Because again, we'd have to contract this out, and as soon as we contract it out, they're just going to come right back in. So we're going to have to be prepared to hire a contractor to clean this encampment up, and then fence it, and then have some sort of security on it. I mean, I know that when we were going to do that Blackjack Creek Trail project, the chief at the time had huge concerns that all we were going to do is open it up to homelessness, and he even joked about needing to get a dirt bike or a horse to patrol the area. Well, this is just proof in the pudding that he was exactly right. This is that small first foray into that little piece of that project that went sideways, and it's turned into a major issue, partially because Kentucky Fried Chicken's right there, so they have a free food source. And I know that sounds disgusting, but that's just the fact of the matter. They're right there. They have access to the foot ferries, and so it's a problem because it's strategically located. And at this point, I wanted to bring this to utility or land use to how do you want staff to proceed? Because this isn't just a public works. Hey, we're going to go down and clean it. That's not the solution, and I don't really know what the solution is unless we get, it's not.
What's this conservancy project?
Well, Zach was working with, I can't recall the group. He was going to be here today, but his mother-in-law is like on her final minutes, it sounds like, to put it into a conservancy where they own it and they manage it. So looking at it just cursory, that seems like that might be the best case if the conservancy is willing to deal with these issues.
Like, are you talking Great Peninsula? Sorry.
Yeah, I think it is. And
is there perhaps going to be a reluctance when they realize their responsibilities?
Possibly.
I mean,
we might have to clean it up before they'll take it.
Well, yeah.
And then going forward, then it would be their issue. My only concern with it, if we give it to the conservancy, can we make sure that we get? I think that's the best alternative myself. can we make sure that we can get a trail easement at some point?
Yeah, I mean, we could certainly have that conversation.
Hey, we want to give this to you, but
who does it
someday we
belong
might
to?
want to build a trail.
I mean, there's so many property owners in here.
It's, yeah,
Where's
it's
Kendall? Is that Kendall there?
like Jones,
Kendall.
Mike Jones. You know.
Kendall, Jones and
Archer.
Bill up by Tremont?
There it is.
Same family?
You just
The Boy Scout Bridge is where the water line crosses, and the only reason we cleaned that one up is because it's an open right of way from a utility standpoint. The majority of the properties are either privately owned or they are like that one there. It's an unopened right of way where when I first came here, we had requests all the time for us to take a tree down, for example. We said, look, it's unopened right of way. You're the underlying property owner, so. Until those right-of-ways get open,
I apologize.
you got all these unopened right-of-ways. They're not the city's issue. They're the adjoining half. Half of that is privately owned. So I would assume that the health department is, if they're going to be robust about kind of getting this cleaned up, they need to be sending this letter to all those individuals.
I was on the team, the point in time count, that went down Kendall because we heard that there were active camps there. And I wanted to see it. So there were 3 of us who went. And which is Kendall? That one.
First Kendall, is this it?
Is that Kendall? So
Yeah.
we walked down, and the first, immediately there's a little clearing there, and there were just bags of trash. But this down here is at the bottom. And what's interesting is that it wasn't that accessible in terms of it was very steep and it was wet.
Yeah,
and I was thinking there should have been gravel.
Yeah,
if it
Kendall's
was gonna be
hard
a
to
trail.
get down to.
Yeah.
But it has the bridge.
Yeah,
that
the
was-
bridge is interesting, and we crossed the bridge, went up the other side to the Kentucky Fried Chicken side, which is up on, what's the street with an M? Maple. And so we walked all the way up there, and we walked into some ones that looked like they had like cars. They're just.
Well, that's getting up on the backside of the cemetery.
Yeah, we were up there, and our impression was that it wasn't an active site because it's not accessible. You're not going to walk all the way down there.
this site
And then
is
come
not
back
being
up.
accessed from there. It's being accessed.
It's
by
from the
Canopy.
Kendall side. The Kendall-Sydney side
No,
is
this one's
probably...
the Kendall one's upstream. That one is accessed either off of Sydney and Kendall to the west,
And that's where we went.
or
Sydney-
Knights of-
Sydney,
Knights
Kendall.
of Pis-
But you said
Pythias.
it's upstream of Kendall? So like...
No, it's right in the Kendall right of easement.
This is
This
down by
Where's
camp,
the actual
this
bridge?
camp is down right behind Kentucky Fried Chicken.
Well, not really, because we walked there. This was near the bridge. This was
No, there's
upstream
multiple
from the
camps.
bridge.
We've
Well,
got-
this one in the picture, because I took this picture, is upstream from the bridge.
Yeah, I don't know where they got that.
Yeah, this one is
I
from
think
the
Zach,
bridge.
Zach provided. Okay, well he put it.
No,
in
I
the
sent this to Carrie because I took pictures on that day.
Okay.
These are my pictures.
Okay. Well, that's,
we have
that's the wrong thing.
separately walked from KFC to there too. That encampment there is not quite as. This is a lot of stuff that was there. We were really surprised at this, and we were just thinking there would need to be a barge. And Brian, who wrote the letter, he lives here on Kitsap Street, and he works for the health department. So he came and joined us because he was the regional director of the point in time count, and he was going like, "Oh, you got to clean this up."
Sounds like we may have accurate information here. Can you send somebody from Public Works to the city-owned property,
Well-
like KFC, and determine?
Well, we know we got a letter on this. This is on
we got
our
a letter,
property.
but if Fred's saying these pictures aren't on our property.
Okay.
And this is what Brian saw that day. This is what made him excited because, I said, well, why don't we have the Boy Scouts clean it up? And he said, well, no, we can't because there may be needles in the bags. And
Okay. Well,
So-
I know that in talking to Zach last week, and he had told me that this letter was coming. It was specific to the Blackjack Creek camp. The reality is whether the picture matches up. The bigger issue is there's a number of
So
encampments.
let's go assess what it is our liability is.
It's this property, the one that Nick
Yeah,
had
and whether or not what it's going to involve to clean up our property, because we don't know, because it's not in these pictures. And then whether or not we can secure our property or not if it's too steep. So I would, you don't want to send one guy down there. I would say you send a couple of public works guys.
Okay, well, we'll go assess it, but go highlight that property again there.
Which one?
This one that was,
Blackjack LLC?
is that the one that we bought?
No.
No, this is privately owned. Blackjack LLC is like,
And that's the Kentucky Fried Chicken right there?
Yeah.
that's KFC. This is Blackjack LLC. This is Les Schwab. Our property doesn't start until, I mean, we have the right of way, but our property doesn't start until you get down here. Where we
Isn't
have
ours near the cemetery?
Yeah, this is
Yeah.
City of
Right
Port
there.
Orchard, LID.
But I thought we picked up a property behind Kentucky Fried Chicken from that had to do with that trail project. We got property for the trail. And that's
Did we get an easement?
That James got that. No, it was, and I thought that was that Blackjack.
Doesn't look like it.
Doesn't appear so.
Go to the tax statement very quickly. Okay, Newberry.
It's going to somebody in Silverdale. It's the address on
Okay.
the top right corner.
Okay, well, we'll do more work, but the bigger picture is still that, it's one thing to clean it, and we don't have it in the budget. It's another thing to fence it.
Whose property are you asserting this belongs to?
I don't know whose property this is. This is off of Kendall. We just walked down and crossed the bridge.
Well, it's through it's an unopened right of way, but it's where the water line goes
I mean,
through.
I think what's clear is that with all of the right of way in there and the potentially vacated or unvacated right of way, depending on the date of the addition,
Right.
it seems like until somebody acquires all of this and either vacates the right of way or we determine that what right of way has been vacated and what hasn't, it's really hard to figure out even what the boundaries of a potential Blackjack Creek ownership look like.
And that's what Zach is working with this group
Yeah.
on the Conservancy properties.
Well, and it seems, Seattle has like the Cedar River watershed that is totally a natural area fenced off that's a drinking water source. I mean, it feels to me like, from a water quality standpoint, fencing this thing off, and if you were going to have access through it, it would be a fenced trail corridor and not anything more than that to keep people from going into the woods.
Mark, are we gonna the well 13 project? Is that replace the water line on the Blackjack Creek? Okay, so one of the things I think we need to do is remove that bridge off the water line.
Yeah, I've been wanting to do that for years. I just was
It's creating an access point.
Yeah, they're still going to climb across, taking the bridge off, because there's.
We'll have to fence the two ends.
Well, we did. We fenced the ends, and it's not. People are just walking around.
So is the bridge on our property?
So no, it's
Our
right
right of
away.
way.
It's in the Kendall Street right of way, which is unopened, other than there's a water line in it.
My other thought here would be that, all of the people who privately own land down here are facing adverse possession claims by allowing people to occupy this property or to establish trails on it. I mean, there's prescriptive easements, there's potential claims, and the thing that could be done in addition to sending the health department letter is to say, hey, you have people occupying your property and you're at risk of these claims if you don't secure your property.
Sounds like a code enforcement issue.
Sort of.
Is that why Brian was writing? Because was he saying that these parcels here belong to the city?
Yes. He's saying that those are. He's identified properties, and again, there's a number of properties in that corridor. But
Yeah,
there's the one up. There's also an encampment that was down off of Arnold, not just Blackjack. There was one Arnold that we owned there that we cleaned up once.
Doesn't sound like this is going anywhere this morning. We should need to do some more homework. As what we own and physically visit their sites that we own.
there's one of the numbers he references.
And we may need to secure our sites.
Yeah.
There's the other one, 005.
Which, as Mark points out, we didn't budget any money to do that. So we'll have to clean them up and secure them if we're not going to give them just a conservancy.
Right, and then how, you spend a lot of money on chain link fence. Are you doing 8 foot with razor wire on the top, and is that going to keep people out?
Well, so another thought on this is we've got plans to update our park plan, and I think identifying the assembly of a Blackjack Creek watershed property as either a city or a conservancy project to put that into permanent open space. Once it's in your plan, you can apply for grants like RCO grants to both purchase and do things like secure it with fencing, and I think it would score pretty well given that you have a homeless population living in a watershed. But we have to come up with a plan for how to, that would be a project.
Okay, so more to come on this?
Yeah.
All right. Public art.
All right, so I'm going to pass out. We received an email last week from Julie Benson. And I'm going to go to. So the material that she wants to use is a vinyl banner, which I don't think was ever. That was not proposed to us until the night of the council meeting when we were like, oh, this is going to be a glued-on vinyl banner. I think WashDOT is probably just going to say no to this, and so I think we need to share this information with WashDOT and let WashDOT.
I think we want to say no to it because we have to maintain it.
Sure. Yeah. So.
And they're just zip tied on.
It's a vinyl banner.
I think she's proposing
she wants to
print
glue
it on
it.
this and then glue it on.
Glue it, and she said or Velcro.
So that she's saying an E6000 industrial strength glue to glue this onto the metal boxes, which I don't think that makes a lot of sense.
Your traditional wraps, or the wraps that we heard about in Seattle, for example, how are those adhered?
It's a heat process.
It's a heat
just
shrink
like you're
kind
doing on a bus, and they run about $1,500.
Okay.
They prep them out. Like Bremerton, so the ones in downtown Bremerton, like at 6th and Park, I drove by that one the other day. I was trying to look at it. I couldn't tell if that was like an actual artist had painted that one or if it was like this heat applied, properly mounted stuff, but it looked good. But
They do artist renderings and then they transfer it onto a wrap. And then there's a
So they're
professional
not actually
company.
painting any of the boxes themselves.
No, there are communities that do that, but that's, the beauty of the wrap is it's vinyl and you can, graffiti happens on it and you can go clean it. If somebody's original artwork gets spray paint, we're going to just have to paint the whole box gray again.
I'll take pictures of the ones in Seattle because they look like they're painted on, and I don't know if they are vinyl or
I
painted
think the
on.
ones in Seattle were painted.
Yeah, I think they allow.
Yeah.
And that's a maintenance, that'd be a maintenance.
But that's they own the boxes and they own the electric company, so everything is theirs.
Yeah.
Whereas we're dealing with signals that we don't.
And they haven't been a problem there. I mean, people aren't defacing them.
The one up by Reed Muller in that tattoo shop, it's been tagged a few times. The one that she wants to cover.
Oh, yeah, the one on Bay and Sydney.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
been tagged.
You know, I think she's relatively new to town, and I like the idea
a great
that
idea.
she's bringing. I don't know that she has the experience with the execution, is my sense.
Yeah.
I look at this and wonder if the city were to provide some sort of funding for this. What are the eligible sources, and is this a
General
hotel?
fund, and we've got it.
It can't be tourism type things.
We could, heads, how does it put heads in beds?
Yeah.
That's the,
So in the absence of a pot of money that's available for it, it seems like it's a.
we can add this to the mid-biennium review when we're reallocating dollars if we have any.
No, that's kind of, that's what I said at the council meetings when she's talking about Belker. I'm like, well, if we're going to do this, we need to do it right. And that means we need to find a funding source. Otherwise, don't do it.
And if we're going to put funding in it, it should be a competitive process to choose what design goes on there.
Right. And, the metal's got to be, I don't know if they, some sort of solution to prep it, clean it. It's a process.
So if you wanted, if they're $1,500 a pop, and we wanted to do, probably need to put $10,000 in the budget. I mean, if we're going to ramp a program up, we're not going to do 2 boxes.
Right. Yeah, you're gonna
Any idea of how many boxes we're talking about?
I think she's identified 6 or 8 of them total citywide.
Everywhere we got a traffic light, there's a pair of them.
And I don't know if there's new ones going in at Tremont associated with the new signal or not.
Yeah,
There's-
they're the old boxes that we took out, but we have new controls in there.
There's several
Okay.
in Sydney if you think about it.
Yeah, Sydney and Lund.
And it might be as simple, well, relatively simple as looking at what Bremerton or Seattle has.
Number of communities are doing it.
Yeah. Okay.
So so should we just say that this material is not going to be acceptable to the city, or do we want WashDOT to say it?
We can say it.
Okay, we'll say, okay.
say we're going to look at a...
We're going to look into it and look at funding options and potentially have a more competitive process for designing.
Okay. Well, then that opens up the whole other conversation, which is the graphic approval.
Sure. Carrie, can you do a little more research on how other cities have gone about like a design process and selecting designs? And it seems to me that if we were going to solicit proposals, we'd want to have a picture of each box with dimensions and let somebody give them like a square to complete. And
I'll send a email to Tom Nucky at City of Bremerton, copy you in, and just see what process they went through.
Great.
And
Okay.
the ones downtown, like she was proposing, you go up to Sydney Gallery and find a historical image, and boom, you're done. You don't have to have an artist create something.
Well, yeah, I thought that was.
And
I
that's
thought that was great.
very
I thought that was
appropriate
cool.
for downtown. You know, do we want that at Bethel and Sedgwick?
But I
You
seem
know.
to sense that the certain council members weren't satisfied with that.
Well, one of them's sitting here.
Well, I thought that Cindy and Beck seemed to be kind of opposing.
It was Fred and Cindy. Or Fred and Beck were the two no votes.
But I think I hear what you're saying. I think some council members did want to be involved with the design selection, just if not approval, just to get a sense of what it was.
Right.
And I think Cindy's very concerned about that, even though she did vote yes.
yeah, it seems we would have to put out with our request for proposals for design like criteria and judge it, like how we are going to judge these, and come up with some kind of a objective scoring process rather than just the council deciding what they like.
Or, well, initially she was just going to do it.
Yeah.
There wasn't a selection process.
So we will continue working on this, but we'll pump the brakes for now.
Yeah, and I'll get it added to the mid-year review at $10,000.
Okay?
All right, item number 3. Updates to development regs.
Yeah, so first of all, just being that we had this meeting scheduled and we're scheduled to vote on the ordinance on the new zoning code, is there any further discussion or questions about what is moving forward or observations that this committee wants to discuss, or does this committee want to make a recommendation that would be reflected in the record as having been reviewed by this committee, and there will be a whereas statement added that says the land use committee recommends approval of this. I mean, are we...
So you've heard me talk about storage facilities, and you said, I think, that there's a minimum 2-story height requirement.
Yes.
Does that essentially mean, though, that they're going to get the same building layout footprint, but at 2 stories?
They still have to comply with all design standards, but yes, they are not allowed to build the 1-story storage units. They
Right.
have to design a 2-story unit.
Right.
And I think if you're going 2 stories, you're going to design it differently than a 1-story. But I don't know that we're that far into the weeds in terms of how it has to be designed.
Well, I think that by having that in there, it pushes it into a different buyer.
The one that's going to be
I think so, too.
2 stories or more. I mean, the minimum is
Yeah.
going to be 2 stories.
Yeah, there's a number of people that
Sure,
we've
put an
talked to over
elevator
the
in,
years
yeah.
that want storage units that are not this
You can serve
product type. They don't have the horsepower for this product type.
Where did we put the 2-story limit?
It's right there. On the very end, last sentence.
2 stories in height.
at least.
Yeah.
So the argument here is that when you're looking at 2 stories with the elevator requirement and all that, you are looking at a different level of developer than you are
Yeah.
we're seeing.
Correct, and
Okay.
a different assessed value for the building type, because it's a much more substantial building and a much more valuable building in terms of the property tax revenue that comes in.
It's not a metal pole building.
Yeah.
But to be clear, you could still have the same sort of consumption of our commercial lands, although we're staying with the interim zoning.
Well, and there's a map, yeah.
Yeah,
So it's
okay.
only the mapped areas, and the other thing that you have to do is, in addition to the criteria for a CUP, you must
Provide that
You must provide the
analysis.
study,
Yeah.
the analysis, showing that it's necessary to meet the needs of our population, not simply the region.
Okay.
I think speaking for Councilmember Lucarelli, there was pushback on the, on the grocery store and the additional height. You know, I
In
don't.
certain areas, right? It was an interesting argument.
Yeah, and I could argue this either way, and I'm going to argue it, I guess, to let the market dictate. We're going to get. It won't be the first thing out of the gate, because it needs more rooftops, probably 500 more rooftops before there's going to be market demand. Right. And when it happens, it's going to be one site of 5,000 and it's capped at 20,000 square feet. So it'll be one building that has 1 story more height somewhere in downtown. And the more centrally, as John was speaking to, the more centrally located it is, the more people are going to be apt to walk to it versus get in their car and visit it. So I would just advocate, let the market determine where the best location. It isn't going to be in the next 3 to 5 years. I'm confident of that. That, you know, 100 Bethel's been trying to attract one. They've got, if they could get the project off the ground, the 5,000 square foot model is a co-op. We'd really like I'd rather see a Trader Joe's or a Harbor Greens type. That's bigger. That's 10, 15,000 square feet. But there just isn't demand for it. Yeah. There aren't the rooftops right now, so those retailers aren't interested.
And the place I could envision it more than anywhere is probably within 1 block of the foot ferry terminal, where somebody's coming to their car and can swing in and grab something on their way home. I mean,
Well, it's got to be close to the marina too.
Yeah, it's the marina, it's the foot ferry. I think that's the most viable place for the Trader Joe's size 10,000 square foot store. If you put it elsewhere, it's not going to get nearly the traffic.
Well, we had the issue though that when the dock first opened and they had, you know, the organic vegetables and the higher end meats and the seafood, we didn't make it because we don't yet have that palette here. You don't have the expendable cash here. That's just a reality. In Paulsbo, they do. They've got that little teeny store, that little Marina Mart, and they've got a lot of high end stuff in there, and it's always busy. But you've got people that are willing to spend money on better quality produce or meats or imported fun things.
It's not going to raise the heights of our hold down. Well, that's what I'm trying to assure everybody. It's not going to raise it's going to be, one's going to get built, and there's not going to be market demand for a second one. It's going to be one pad someplace downtown, and I just advocate, let the market determine where that location is as our downtown develops.
Well, it's interesting. So if they got if we got the amenity of the grocery store, at what point would we know in their development that we would grant them the extra story of
apply
height?
for it.
Okay, so it's before before they even develop the building, though.
Correct. They would be part of their application to develop. So,
And
I would expect that once it's in place, I mean, I don't know if the code language would still be needed. I don't think it would be used because once you have one built, nobody's going to take
build a
advantage.
second one.
Right, and no, it's. I just don't see someone saying, "Okay, we're going to have a grocery store here, so we want the extra floor now." I mean, I can see a market moving in later after it's developed. Unfortunately,
you don't get the height unless you're building the grocery store.
Yeah,
it's not. I'm going to build this. Give me the extra height, and we'll get a grocery store in later.
Yeah, and there could be a situation where somebody tries to make a go of it, and it goes out of business and is repurposed to something else. But the building has at least been designed from an electrical standpoint to support freezers and coolers, and it has to initially be designed as that use.
I didn't have anything else for the
that was just
regulations.
That we debated that at length.
Yeah,
so.
right.
Yeah, I was comfortable with that. I guess, and the part that I am, it's not, but the parking, because I still hear from people that if you want the development downtown and you want the people living there, there has to be adequate parking for everyone. So do we still have the half a parking spot for a living unit?
No, that was part of the MUP. The
Okay.
half a living, but you can apply for an administrative variance and you can justify a reduction through a parking study for your proposed
Okay, but they
use.
have to do a parking
But
study.
they have to get a variance to be able to reduce it below the adopted standard. So So yes, they could get to
This
a half a
project
unit.
over here, that they're 400 stalls. in that.
No, and I'm glad they're doing that because I'm hearing from someone who, for example, wanted to buy a building downtown. They realized they have 15 employees. They couldn't provide parking for their employees, and then worried about their clientele. So that's why they didn't even get. And I thought, well, that's interesting. But that seems to be one of the constraints. I mean, we're saying that people don't want to buy higher end goods. Well, that's part of it. We don't have the demographics, but I think those demographics also expect a lot of parking, convenient parking, that they can go and buy their.
I don't believe parking is going to be a problem for our downtown when we have people, a different demographic living downtown that don't necessarily need 2 cars.
Or will be living down.
I mean, and I don't have that problem, but I hear.
Well,
from
there's
people
going to be probably a lot more people that are commuting to that job at the shipyard or or Seattle because they're walking out their door from their apartment or their condominium, and they have a car, but there aren't 2 or in my household.
It's not
3.
a personal problem that I have with cars, but we talk about attracting more shoppers, and I think that's one of the things that is a constraint.
So those shoppers will come from the rooftops because there's more people living there.
Yeah, the transactions are going to come. They're going to be foot traffic transactions.
Yeah, I think
That's one thing that a company that I'm pretty familiar with about opening stores. That's the one thing that I keep being questioned whenever I say, "Hey, there might be an opportunity." This individual that I know says, "Show me the transactions. What are the transactions in those metropolitan areas? They are foot traffic transactions. They are not parking-based transactions."
Well, and plus, I don't want to beat this dead, but just from the door building in McCormick, they would tell me they wanted something nice that they could go to instead of Paulsville or Gig Harbor. They wanted to be our downtown.
Sure.
But right after that, they'd say, "But I don't have a place to park downtown." That's their impression. I think it's incorrect.
You got to be willing to walk a block. It's not going to be.
And I don't have that problem because I don't drive
I don't
downtown.
have that problem when I do drive downtown. So
We don't, but
I
a lot
find
of
that a
people.
curious comment.
But a lot of their perception is, it's not as inviting as Gig Harbor, where you have the acres of parking by the.
Well, we're not going to build Gig Harbor North.
Well, I know, but
on our
they
waterfront.
want it to be. They want it to be attractive.
Well, if we get
So-
if we start getting rid of waterfront parking, which has always been kind of a topic, the 4-hour parking or the paid parking, if that goes away, then people are going to have to start parking outwardly, or the transaction, what's going to support the downtown are going to be people living there. They aren't going to be people coming. I mean, Paulsville has a huge parking problem. They've got that waterfront lot that's always full. Mm-hmm. The street parking is always full. The only way we park is because we're in the marina and we've got a pass. But even there, that's hit and miss these days. So it's great that everybody wants to come in. But yeah, parking is definitely a problem.
I guess I'd like it to be a problem. I don't
yeah,
think it's a problem.
it's not a problem yet, and
No, yes, exactly.
and this is a transitional thing. I mean, there are going to be growing pains and pressures associated with parking as things evolve, but the long-term pathway is that parking demand should decline as the balance of living and working in Port Orchard shifts. Yeah, exactly. All right, so I've got 3 other things to pass out with regard to development regulations. These are our next steps. I'll set 3 of these sheets down. The first of these, now that we are looking to adopt the new zoning code, assuming everything passes, we would like to introduce shifting our short plat threshold to 9 lots. So this is just the definition chapter. We also are amending the short plat and subdivision chapter to refer to the correct numbers of lots. This is something that the building community had requested when we redid our subdivision ordinance. We said we don't want to go there yet because we don't have standards in place to that give us the assurance that we're going to have quality short plats if we get rid of a public process at the hearing examiner. I feel like we're getting to the point where we should move in this direction. The other thing is that our townhome regulations stipulate that you have 1 townhome per lot, which means that you have to do a subdivision to build a townhome development. And so if you want 4 townhomes on an infill lot, you're going to need to do a short plat, or if you want to do 6 townhomes on an infill lot, you short plat that to create a parcel for each of the townhomes, and this would allow for that attached development under an administrative approval. And it also facilitates the cottage court building type, which is the little cottage cluster, could be done under a short plat because it goes up to 9 lots. So, any objection to taking this to the Planning Commission?
No.
All right. The next item on the list is we realized that as part of our move to a density-based, or away from a density-based zoning code, it's got the backup sheet there. We believe we need to adopt an on-site recreational space requirement for subdivisions, meaning that for subdivisions that are larger than 10 lots, a certain amount of square footage needs to be provided in some sort of active or passive recreational space to serve the development. In the past, like at the Ridge, McCormick North, we've had requirements for these little pocket parks. We don't actually have the ability to require those under our existing code because we don't have a standard. So this standard is largely based on a provision from Snohomish County. It provides a menu of what types of facilities can meet the requirement, whether it's playgrounds, pedestrian paths, athletic fields or basketball courts, areas with picnic tables or gazebos. And so along with the short subdivision standard, we would like to bring this forward as a supplemental zoning code addition. I think it's we're looking at a project right now off of Geiger for a residential subdivision under the new code, and the good thing is that we have standards that allow for the appropriate size lots for the building type, but in that development right now there's no proposed recreational space, and with 8 units per acre they can shrink the lots and do a PUD and create that open space, but under the new standard, by letting them maximize or use the minimum lot size, we want to make sure that we get some recreation space as part of a larger development. So, pretty straightforward, but
Sure. So can I just relate one experience that I have with this? Is
Yes.
the central location requirement that the county currently has, and how that seems to be the biggest fight that we have. And did you address that in here? That these tracks shall be centrally located for the development, for the proposed development.
Yeah.
We have experiences where people take the worst remaining piece
In
of
the corner,
property in
yeah.
the subdivision, shove it into a
Yeah.
far corner, and we get into this argument with the development community. And I don't know.
yeah, we have locational requirements. They do have to have a certain amount of frontage on a public street.
Mm-hmm.
I guess if you have a specific recommendation, I'm happy to add it there to.
Is that like IX on the second page? Access should be provided from all dwellings. That's
That's
not
a little
quite
different.
central.
Yeah, so it's
Centrally located.
centrally located, somewhat central to the subdivision or the development versus in a remote tract.
Yeah, so something that says
one guy-
at least 50% of the on-site recreational space shall be centrally located.
something like that.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, I think we can add something to that
Okay.
effect. The final suggestion that we had that came from McCormick Woods and also the home builders, they really didn't like, they don't like our existing significant tree ordinance or the proposed one, although I think it's moved in the right direction for them. The thing that we've come to realize, and I'm going to show you a particular site here. And the tornado did help us with some of the trees out there. Maybe help is the wrong word, but there's a site that we have been studying as part of evaluating the effectiveness of the new zoning ordinance, and it's at Blueberry and Geiger here. This is a pretty wooded site, and the thing that we found is that there are like 450 trees on the site already, and the significant tree replacement ratio for this site out here is enormous. They've got to put in 700 or 800 trees on a site that's already heavily forested. There isn't room on this site to hit the replacement ratios, and because of the steep, it's a sloping site, they have to put in road grades, they have to do cuts to make flat roads. It just isn't viable to retain the significant trees or to replace them at the ratios specified. And so the recommendation that McCormick Woods had made was, really your concern isn't I think when this significant tree ordinance was written, it was before annexations in Port Orchard, and it was about retaining big old trees in and around downtown. When you're looking at developing undeveloped sites, it's a totally different issue, and really the concern is how much canopy do we have once the trees that are retained and the trees that are planted as part of required streetscape or buffers, are we achieving some level of future tree canopy that's appropriate to maintain, I don't know if it's a wooded feel, but at least a park-like feel in the neighborhood. And so this again is from Snohomish County. They, depending on the housing type, it's anywhere from 15 to 30% canopy, which is the percentage of trees retained plus those that are planted at 20 years maturity. So it gives you basically have the landscape architect say this particular species of tree when planted here is going to grow to be this much canopy, and they provide you with a matrix that shows how much canopy will be on the site in the future. And so this gives the flexibility to either save or replace trees, but there is an incentive in here for tree retention, which says that you get to measure an existing significant tree at either 150 or 125% of its current footprint. So it gives you a little bit of a bonus for any significant trees that you can retain. So I think it's much more flexible, and really it gets at the objective of having a long-term tree canopy as opposed to potentially replanting a site like this at a tree density that isn't possible. So we'd like to take this forward as part of a very minor second phase of amendments along with the short plat and the recreational open space requirement, and take that through the Planning Commission this spring and bring it back as a supplemental addition to the new zoning code. And this would replace our proposed significant tree chapter that we're going to go forward with for now, but I think it's a different approach.
We're going forward with the current as they exist.
Yeah,
okay.
yeah. I don't want to hold up the entire zoning
Right.
code to
Right.
revisit this one issue.
Right.
I think it can be fixed separately, and that way people who are waiting for the new code to come into effect can go forward with their projects.
So I think that looks fine. Going to the Planning Commission.
All right, great. Finally, the last issue that we have, Gary Anderson reached out to me concerning a particular property. The Chinese buffet restaurant on Bethel here,
China Sun?
they also own this big property that's proposed for commercial heavy.
Just north of it, yeah.
Yeah, so they're, I was zoomed in on that earlier. So yeah, this piece right here, he would like to change this from commercial heavy to commercial mixed use. And obviously the hearings have already taken place. We're at final adoption, but I don't think it would be impossible for a motion to be made to allow that to change. I wanted to verify that this is truly what he wants, and I said make sure that the property owner knows that if they go commercial mixed use, they gain the residential uses, but they lose the more intense commercial uses. And so he's going to verify, but you may get a request for this at the 11th hour. I guess it is the 11th hour, so something like 11:45, asking for this change, and I would be supportive of it. Again,
When do we vote on those comp plan amendments?
this isn't a comp plan amendment. This is adoption of the new zoning map consistent with the new zoning code. So it's a legislative process. Anybody who commented during the period saying they want something else, we've been able to accommodate through just recommended changes. It's just that they failed to get a hold of us prior to the hearing.
Can you zoom in on that lot again? So, if there were... Okay, so what's the... where are the roundabouts going? There's one at Blueberry and one at Salmonberry.
So yeah, Blueberry right here, and then Salmonberry.
So they
up
wouldn't
there.
have a separate access point. So they would have to go to one of the two roundabouts to make
and
their...
make a U-turn. So the other thing is that this has a huge wetland complex on the backside of it, and so we wanted to try to keep some of the big tracks intact so that they could be developed as a more heavy commercial type use. You know, the potential for a big box type of store, you know, it's a little bit smaller than the Fred Meyer site in terms of a shopping center. Something big could still happen there, and so the question is, do we retain that for commercial heavy because it's one of the few large parcels we have left, or do we grant the request because everybody seems to feel that apartments are viable, commercial development is not viable. But whether it makes sense to have a heavy commercial in the middle of this expanse, I don't know if it does.
What's the net usable acres there? Probably 5.
Well, the total,
20-acre site, I bet.
it's a 20.9 acre site. So you're probably 5 to 7.
He's not gonna develop anything to the east.
No, there's no access to the east side over here.
So that's like
Goes into
buffer
that
averaging.
wetland behind it.
You could do you got the wetland on the other side too. That's
Well, I mean, buffer averaging, you have to do mitigation if you're
you
going
could
to
do
buffer.
I'm saying he could go to the east of that wetland and enhance
He
that
could
wetland.
he could encroach on this wetland
In
by
exchange for-
mitigating off-site.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Yeah, mitigate to the east to get more drilling on the west.
But he doesn't even have access to do mitigation over there potentially.
That's still-
He'd have to build some sort of temporary access or get it from a.
Yeah, there's one beyond
Another
that.
neighbor.
Okay, but he would see.
Okay.
So anyway, I'll have more information on this if they want this particular change, but I think it has to be at this point it would have to be a motion to say, hey, I think that I want to move to recommend this ordinance, but I want one change on the map, and this is the change. Or I can bring it forward as a map A and a map B, and you guys can vote.
Okay, and we'll have a staff recommendation.
Yes.
Have we thought of making all of Bethel mixed use instead of commercial heavy? I mean, and not just this parcel?
I mean, that's certainly something that could be considered.
Would that be a comp plan amendment or a...
Let me zoom in here.
Because we keep hearing that that's commercial heavy may not be the most likely developer.
Where we want to put a car dealership.
So most of the vacant sites on the Bethel corridor are commercial mixed use. There's some commercial corridor in here, and originally most of this was commercial corridor. We had requests from these two owners to go commercial mixed use. These properties are sort of fragmented, and but commercial mixed use, commercial corridor, I don't think I have a strong preference one way or another. The north end of the corridor towards Lund is all commercial heavy and commercial corridor, which is more retail and big box type focused.
So what do you think is most attractive in terms of flexibility?
I think the commercial mixed use is more attractive. I mean, I could see at least taking the entire east side of Bethel from Crawford, from these, not including the Crawford property, but from this Crawford development down to the shopping center that exists here with the marijuana store and the licensing place.
Cedric, yeah.
What's the red hat?
crockpot?
That's commercial mixed use.
Commercial mixed use.
So make it all red.
The Piperberry is commercial corridor because that's already improved, and I don't expect that to change anytime soon. There was the old, isn't there a roller rink up there? And
Yeah, skating rink.
and then there's that little shopping office area. But yeah, I think you could potentially take this whole area as commercial mixed use and go in that direction if you were inclined.
Can we ask the full council if they have any preference for that? Because I think that might make more sense to make the bigger area.
Yeah. Yeah, and so from a comp plan standpoint, these areas are all commercial, and so there's multiple commercial zones that can be implemented, and you don't have to amend the comp plan to change the zoning as long as it stays within the commercial family of zones. And that's different than the county because the county actually has every zone as a comp plan designation rather than as like an overarching umbrella designation. And so, but this is the one time we're taking legislative action where I think it is appropriate to do that. I think on a case-by-case basis, if somebody wants this, they come in and apply for a quasi-judicial rezone and they go to the hearing examiner and get that changed. But because we're rolling out the new code and the new map, this is the one chance where council, can go down this road. And I don't think it's a problem because you're doing an area-wide zoning map adoption.
The one thing I would say is that the people who are commercial heavy and commercial corridor, they wouldn't have been sent notification of a rezoning change because it wasn't significant. The people going to CMU did receive notice. So if you rezone them with no notice.
So they'd have to get notice.
I'm not sure.
Well, they don't have to, but council is risking the wrath of unhappy people that have a new zoning designation, and they may have had plans for something here. So I think at a minimum, changing this to mixed use is not a problem. I think by going a step further, that's potentially a something that we would want to notify these people and maybe do it as part of a separate ordinance.
Okay.
So, any other questions?
It sounds like this has some urgency for Jerry.
It's been listed for sale for years, so I think it's for sale, but he feels it's more marketable as commercial mixed use. But I also think he didn't read that deeply into it to know that there's further restrictions on like drive-through restaurants in the commercial mixed use zone compared to the commercial corridor or commercial heavy.
Okay.
Where did my agenda go? What's next on the agenda?
The agenda for the comp plan.
Oh, that's right, yes. I have mine highlighted here. So I sent out via email this Vision 2040 document. Hopefully you guys saw that. It's in strike through and underline. Unfortunately, they did not make it a red text to where it's easy to see the proposed changes. But taking a step back, so this was just introduced to me last Thursday when I went to the Regional Staff Committee meeting for the PSRC. It is going to the Growth Management Policy Board, which I believe either Beck or Rob attends. I forget which attends which committee. I think this is Beck's committee. And so they're going to be introduced to this. They're not voting on it yet, but these proposed changes are going to be finalized as part of the EIS process here in the near future, and so I think it's important that we comment on this in March or April at the latest. So I've tried to highlight some of the key changes, and if you go, this is directly from my packet that I printed out, and so on the bottom it says packet page 10 is the page that I am on. The first policy that I wanted to, packet page 9 is where I wanted to start. So PPP EN-B is about the fourth one down. I don't have a real issue with this, but they're saying provide equitable and convenient access for urban residents to parks, trails, tree canopy, and open space in a way that benefits historically underserved communities. First of all, equitable and convenient access are two totally different things, and I think that this policy could potentially be split in two where it's important to have equitable access to these features, but it's also important to have convenient access, but equitable and convenient I think is a harder thing to achieve as one policy. And also if it's equitable, I don't know why it's totally necessary to point to then highlight historically underserved communities, because if the goal is equitable access, it seems like you shouldn't need to call out any specific group as needing priority over the other. But that was just my observation of reading this policy. So I think we need to, this is going to be on the work study agenda in March, and I think I'm going to start drafting a comment letter, but that's one that I think we should think about commenting on.
Where do you think that came from?
So
I mean,
the initial outreach, so we started commenting on Vision 2050 as part of the EIS scoping document back last summer, and we wrote a letter. We talked about, I did that word search where I looked at the policies, and there are like almost all environmental policies, a lot of transportation policies, and very few social equity type policies, and very few social like creative arts type policies. And that's, I talked about the quadruple bottom line in terms of achieving balance in the community. So I think this is really trying to address equity for environmental and health type issues.
So your idea would be to split those out and delete the historically underserved.
Yeah, I think.
Reference.
I mean, I sort of had less objection to the historically underserved communities as I thought about it more, because I think there is a need to equalize things because it's currently unequal. But it seems like we're highlighting something that's captured in the word equitable.
Right. Okay.
The next one I had a big concern with, MPP ENC, which is the second to the last one there. Specifically, it says reduce stormwater pollution from transportation and development through watershed planning, redevelopment, and retrofit projects. I'm not sure what a retrofit project is, and Mark, you may want to listen to this. If PSRC wants us to adopt comp plan policies that says we're going to retrofit existing facilities, that's hugely expensive and hugely unfunded. I think if we're retrofitting projects as part of reconstruction of a facility, then it's already required in the stormwater regulations when you're doing replacement of a certain percentage of impervious surface, and so it's captured. So I think clarifying what a retrofit project is or defining that term is really important because this is potentially a huge unfunded mandate. So that's all. Did you see that was in there?
Yeah.
Okay. Next,
Mark.
on page 10, the third from the top, MPEN 23. It talks about electrifying the vehicle fleet, and again, they don't have definitions written for these yet, and so I'm not sure whether the vehicle fleet refers to the public vehicle fleet, because we already have policies that we have to get a certain percentage of our city vehicles on alternative fuels, or if that means the population's vehicle fleet of the region, in which case I think it also needs to address the charging infrastructure associated with the vehicle fleet, not just, we don't just need a bunch of electric cars, we also need all of the infrastructure to support those cars, which I think we're getting ahead of by adopting an electric vehicle parking standard in our new zoning code. MP, just two down from that, number 24. It says protect and restore forests, farmlands, wetlands, estuaries, and urban tree canopy. So, again, they're combining protection and restoration of urban tree canopy. And it seems to me, you'll see this later on, that they also want us to densify our urban areas. And I don't know how you protect urban tree canopy and densify at the same time. It seems like they contradict one another.
It's a classic.
And yeah, so I think that this could be, rather than just trying to protect the tree canopy, it should be like maintain the tree canopy, and that's similar to the approach that we want to take with our new tree canopy ordinance, is to make sure that new developments are being planted with a certain percentage of canopy to provide shade and reduce the heat island effect of urban areas, but not just to simply, the way that this is written, I feel like it's written for Bainbridge Island and their approach of not cutting any trees for aquifer protection and not allowing for urban development because of the prioritization of protecting trees. Finally, on page 11, the third to the bottom, MPPEN 5. It wants us to locate development in a manner that minimizes impacts to natural features. I don't know what natural features are. It seems to me that in an area like downtown, we want to locate development in a way that maximizes, the social and cultural benefits of being a city. I mean, the reason that we have urban areas is that they're supposed to become urban. And if we're trying to protect natural features and urbanize, it seems like we need to say this area is for urbanization, this area is not for urbanization. But this is trying to do both together in a way that I think, they're again conflicting. There's conflicting policy language here. But also I need to know what a natural feature is to fully comment on that. And I don't know if you've had a chance to read this. Did anybody else find anything in the environmental chapter that they had major concerns with?
I haven't read through it.
Okay. So prior to work study, I would really read each of these. I would read all of the policies, what's being deleted, what's being added, and some of these are unchanged, but we may want to see changes to them. But, those were the 5 or 6 comments that I picked up on. So then if you go to page 16 of the packet, MPP DP2, and this again is where I think this directly conflicts with the environmental policies. It says, encourage efficient use of urban land by maximizing the development potential of existing urban lands and increasing the density in an urban growth area consistent with the regional growth strategy. And so if we're trying to maximize development potential and increase density, I don't know how you protect urban tree canopy and achieve that objective, unless you're only trying to redevelop existing developed land and not allow any development of undeveloped land. Which, and maybe in a city like Seattle that works, but in a city like Port Orchard where half of our land is still undeveloped because it's been recently annexed, it probably doesn't make sense. On page 17, the second one from the top, MPP DPA, it wants to plan for densities that maximize the benefits of transit investments in high-capacity transit station areas. My thought is that Southworth is a high-capacity transit station area, but it's rural, and so I think that they need to clarify that this only applies to urban high-capacity transit stations and not those that are located in a rural area. I think there's a handful of other. I think, is Vashon part of King County?
Yes.
Yeah, so I think the Vashon terminal is not considered urban. There's a handful of others, and they just need to clarify that. Again, then in 11, the second from the bottom on that page, they want to support the development of centers within all jurisdictions, including transit station areas. So basically, any place where you have a transit station, you're supposed to have a center's designation, which has minimum density requirements. I don't think that's a problem for us, but again, there's rural transit stations that it would potentially affect. Page 18. This is where I think the rubber really hits the road. The top policy, number 13, says direct sub-regional funding, especially county level and local funds, to countywide centers and other local centers. So we've been having this discussion at the KRCC about adopting our local centers and countywide centers policies. This is telling us that basically funding for those centers is going to be prioritized, which is why we have the center's approach to planning, is we wanted to make sure that that we are developing consistent with the growth strategy, but also that we're eligible for funding the development of infrastructure in support of those centers. And and Scott, obviously you work for the county. Our whole discussion has been that the county comp plan only has 2 centers identified in it, Silverdale and Kingston. And I think there's a potential for a whole lot more county centers, but this is, I think, putting the county at a disadvantage for transportation funding because they haven't designated all of these local centers, and Bremerton, Paulsbo, Port Orchard, and Bainbridge Island have.
Do we have a definition for countywide centers?
Yes, PSRC has adopted an entire centers policy that will be part of the Vision 2050.
Okay.
And we are currently putting it into the countywide planning policies.
Okay, because I see it referenced here.
Yes, and that's going to have to, we're updating that right now. So
Okay.
when we talk about the proposed comp plan amendments, we're going to make our language in our comp plan consistent with the new PSRC language.
Could we include that definition in here somewhere as well? Just for context when we're reading through that?
Sure. I will. Can you email that centers document, that like the countywide centers criteria,
To Scott.
to the whole committee?
Oh,
And when we have a discussion at the March work study, also put it in the March work study folder. Okay. So then if you go down on page 18, the second and third to the bottom, the third to the bottom, attract X% of the region's residential and Y% of the employment to high-capacity transit station areas. So what the PSRC is doing here, which isn't necessarily a problem, I do believe Port Orchard is designated as a high-capacity transit station area because of the foot ferry. And so Port Orchard's downtown, along with the other high-capacity transit area stations through the area, they're proposing to send a fixed amount of growth that would be probably a majority of the region's growth to these centers so that they have access to transit facilities. So I want to confirm that Port Orchard is a high-capacity transit station, which I believe that it is. And then, I think council just needs to recognize that growth will be directed to downtown Port Orchard because of this, as part of the regional framework. And that's making it this explicit is a pretty radical departure from the previous Vision 2040. I don't think it's negative. I just think it's something that needs to be understood, and there will be repercussions in terms of how much development we have to permit downtown. And I think the zoning code that we've adopted probably already accommodates for this. So I don't think it's above and beyond what's in the current zoning code. But that's now the regional policy. Then the second to bottom, increase access to opportunity for the region's residents through targeted investment in centers and transit station areas that meet the needs of current and future residents. They're basically, they're wanting us to, in our comp plans, make sure that we're planning investment in support of these areas as well.
So an example of that would just be greater transit opportunities to the center?
No, I think it's so they're saying they want to send a bunch of development to the centers. I think it's water and sewer infrastructure. I think it's your local transportation funding. They're basically wanting you to prioritize building, public investment around these areas to support that growth. There's one other. There's one other policy that discussed that I have not found yet. Somewhere in here it also talks about a local funding priority, meaning that not only is PSRC federal money prioritized to centers, but they want our local investments to be prioritized to centers. And so somewhere in here, I can find it. One. Anyway, just look carefully at these policies based on their funding implications and what they're telling us we have to prioritize, because they're basically through interlocal agreement are saying we as a region are going to invest in a certain way, which takes away some discretion from the city council to invest however you want to, because it's now a regional policy, and you can probably still get away with doing what you want unless somebody challenges you because you're investing in a way that's inconsistent with the comprehensive plan. So it's not that PSRC is going to be looking at your budget every year. It's that if your budget doesn't generally follow the comp plan, there's always a risk that somebody challenges. So that's.
When were you asking us to look through this?
So this is going to be on the work study agenda for March. I believe it's the 18th, maybe. The other thing that's happening is, right before our work study meeting in Bremerton, there's an open house on the draft EIS for Vision 2050, and so I don't know how. I know that some council members went to something like this before, and it was really down to the layperson level of trying to understand how this works, and so I don't know how beneficial it will be to go to the open house, but if you went to it at 4 o'clock until 6, and then we have our meeting at 6:30, I mean, it's a perfect primer for the discussion that we're going to have on commenting on this initial draft letter, as well as potentially commenting on the EIS or expressing a preference for one of the alternatives over others. And just to remind you, there's 3 alternatives. One of them is, stay the course, continue doing what we've been doing. One of them is move in a much more transit-oriented development direction, where we are going to send almost all of, a vast majority of growth is going to be located near transit centers. And then the third one is stay the course but correct for how things have gone over the last 10 years, which has cities like Gig Harbor and Covington growing faster than they should be. So it resets the baseline and then continues on the path that we were trying to go down previously. And ultimately, a preferred alternative is likely to be a hybrid of those, but they want, we have the ability to comment to help them decide how to shape that preferred alternative based on the 3 that they're evaluating.
Okay.
So pretty heavy stuff. It's dry, but it's these are the things that you read now and you comment on now that 5 years from now, when we're updating our comp plan for the next iteration, you're going to say, "Oh, how come we have to do this? Who made this decision?" And this is the decision that's being made that's going to impact you years from now. All right. Finally, the comprehensive plan amendment docket. We prepared a couple of city-initiated amendments to the comp plan for next year, and I touched on one of them, which was the centers policy. PSRC basically adopted new centers guidance. A few of our centers may be slightly too large based on the area requirements. We have to verify that they have the minimum densities required to be a center, and we have to designate them as either a local center or a countywide center. The way that we've proposed this change is we're going to the public process is going to shape exactly what these amendments look like. We've proposed kind of a general framework moving forward, but based on Planning Commission and public input, we may choose to say that, you know what, downtown's going to be a countywide center, but the rest of our centers will be local because we have more freedom to decide what form they take. But at the same time, the Bethel corridor is a priority for transportation investment, and countywide centers are prioritized over local centers. It may be prudent to make the centers along the Bethel corridor a higher order of center, which comes along with higher densities and higher intensity land use, and that potentially helps us in a funding scenario in the future. The other thing is that a few of our centers we may break into two pieces with, like downtown, kind of the West Bay area kind of makes sense as its own planning area, with the rest of downtown being a separate planning area than having all one center. And so, and that's really based on the length of downtown. They really want it to be a half-mile walkshed, and I think it's more than a half mile from West Bay to the far end of downtown. And so I think by breaking that into two, and they can abut one another, but you kind of plan for them separately and to be more of a focused
and you
inward.
got a natural separation there too.
You do, yeah, and then I think also adding Annapolis as a local center, not as a countywide, but because there's a transit hub there. There's a small area there that we may want to say that, hey, this is a special area to us. Let's identify it as such, and so we're gonna do a little. We're going to study this at the same time we're kind of developing the comp plan policy that will ultimately be brought forward.
But at least the interim approach is to call them all countywide at this time?
I think, the industrial park is not eligible because it doesn't have a residential component, and it's too small to be a countywide industrial center.
Okay.
The rest of them could be countywide. I don't think all of them rise to that level, and we need to decide how to kind of divide them up. I think the Upper Mile Hill one's probably a local center. I think the Lower Mile Hill, where the mall is, if that were to redevelop with the vacant property behind that area, could be a higher order of center. But I don't want to get laughed out of the room at KRCC either.
So this is more of just a default until we've understood it better.
Yeah, we're mostly updating verbiage and tweaking the map boundaries to fit the criteria.
Okay.
So, and what's the other comp plan amendment, Carrie?
The TIP and the Bethel Sedgwick corridor plan.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, we update the TIP every year, and then we're putting the Bethel Sedgwick corridor plan as a document adopted by reference, so that it will officially be in our comprehensive plan.
Yeah.
So you're asked to vote on the docket for this year tomorrow night. We didn't want to. We could wait and take it to work study, but it felt like it was straightforward enough that I think with the land use committee recommendation, we can move forward with it.
Okay. Is that it then?
That is all.
So we're adjourned at 10:47.